Peace, everybody. For January 2023, we bring an episode with ICHABOD, YME, Circle T, now available on our Patreon. ICHABOD is one of the undisputed kings of freight graffiti. Go anywhere in North America and watch the lines. Nearly every single time, you're going to see an ICHABOD. This is a feat that an extremely low number of writers have achieved in the entire history of freight graffiti. ICHABOD speaks on how he achieved this level of widespread presence on the lines, how he got into writing graph, exactly how many freights he's done, how he deeply studies freights and rails, how he keeps track of every freight he's done in codes, his past pyromaniac-like tendencies and interest in chemistry, his ideas on money, our society, and more. The full episode is now available on our Patreon, along with an episode from Learn YME, one of the people who ICHABOD first began painting graffiti with, who's been painting on freights since the very early days of the North American freight movement. Learn YME speaks on graffiti, overcoming depression, how the freight scene in North America has changed since he first started till now, and more. Both the ICHABOD and Learn YME episodes are available on our Patreon, along with Glare GH, a video recorded in New York featuring Glare painting trackside spots, highways, streets, and freights. The full video is now available on our Patreon. Members gain access to our Patreon library, featuring videos like Savvy OTR, All We Got Is Us 2, Jedi 5's You Win Some, You Lose Everything, Amuse 126, full episodes from ICHABOD, Learn, Dessa MTA, Bat and Ola, Lex PMS, Curve, Duel, Host 18, XSM, written interviews from Cheek and You Won't, and members are sent any monthly products we do like Living Proof Magazine, prints, mops, and more. Thank you as always to everybody who supports the show in any way. Enjoy the episode. Peace.
Hey, this is Claw Money, and you're listening to Angel and Z, sponsored by Art Primo. What is Art Primo, you ask? How dare you? Art Primo is a graffiti shop that was started by writers for writers in Seattle in 2001, and they have stayed true to their roots for over 20 years, offering everything from caps to inks, to paint, to refillable mops. They got nibs, they got jibs, they got caps, solids, zines, books, and more. And their how-to videos and YouTube channel are legendary. Art Primo strives to keep their prices low and quality high, hand pouring all of their mops and inks in their Seattle warehouse, shipping orders on the same day, and their site is a source of information for all types of writing tools. Tools for what? Tools for the revolution.
So what's been new with you since we last spoke? It's been like a year. I know that you said last time that you really don't care much about leaving New York, traveling outside of the United States. It's completely straight for you to just stay here. Do you still feel that way? Are you sick of New York yet?
Nope, not sick of New York. I'll be here probably till I'm dead. I got a lot of retirement plans here. We'll see if I follow through on those. But a lot of people should leave though, like they did during COVID, so we could have more space and more parking. Same old. What about you guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly feel like I love New York, but then every so often I'm here for too long. Yeah. And then I really don't like it, and I need to get out for a little bit. I need to go kind of like to a secluded area. So it's just kind of strange for me. I was re-listening to our last episode, and you were saying that, and you were saying, like, I never need to leave. But all the people I know who were born and bred here, or even just people who moved here and spent a lot of time here, and they get fucking sick of it after a while, and I can see why. There's a lot of overpopulation, and that just leads to a bunch of stuff, a bunch of, like, corny stuff, a bunch of stressful stuff, a bunch of crazy mental health stuff. So it was just crazy for me re-listening to our last episode, how you said that, because I'm like, that's fucking kind of wild. You know what I mean?
You know what? Over the weekend, I was in central Pennsylvania, which I have this weird obsession about central Pennsylvania. I've been driving through it from New York to Ohio for almost over a decade, probably 15 years. And all along the way, I've stopped in all the towns for other reasons or another. So we were out there, and, you know, you get on the highway and you're like, trees, water, cool, space. Then you get there and in these towns and you're like, shit, everyone here is fucked. So no matter where you go, like, there's always some problem where it's like, there's just some problem, you know? I don't know. No matter where you go, it's just whatever you make of your own situation. I mean, I just had a bunch of friends from Ohio move here. and they're like, I don't know, should I stay or should I go? But then you realize every week there's a show. You can walk around 24 hours a day and do whatever the fuck you want without some guy yelling off his pool, give or take, right? You can eat any time of the day. You go to some cities, everything shuts down by 9. So yeah, I think it is probably one of the best places if you just want to remain here and just do your thing at all costs, all time of the day, right? Other than that, I don't really see a reason to leave ever.
Yeah, I personally just came to a crossroads recently in my life where I was kind of like moving out of a place and I had to decide whether I was staying in New York or doing something else. And I actually chose like the van life. I bought a van and I'm currently converting it. And it's like you said, like moving around, you get to see different things, experience new, I don't know, just having new experiences in life. And that's kind of what I was like itching for, because in my mind I was like, yo, if I just get an apartment in Brooklyn again, it's going to be kind of the same routine, kind of the same roads. So I was like, yo, let me, I'm young, so I was like, yo, why not just experience this? And like you said, central Pennsylvania is actually really sick. I've been going out to Lancaster, like the Amish country.
Yeah.
Dude, it's so sick just to see that way of life and the food there, just everything. And it's like you just sleep somewhere one night and you never have to go there again, and you just keep pushing it,
Yeah, no, that's cool. I guess if that's like everyone has their like little goals or whatever, I just kind of know what I want to do and I already like it. Maybe a lot of people don't even know that about themselves, right? Like they're still trying to figure it out. So they're just like, yeah, I gotta like, what's the movie where the dude gets in the van and he like ends up dying in the van because he has a trust fund?
What's it called? I know that it was in Alaska when he goes there.
Fuck if I know. I don't know. He has the trust fund. He gives it away to the homeless dude. And he ends up dying in the van.
Yeah, that's a great movie. He died alone because he couldn't cross the river at the end.
No, he couldn't find food.
Yeah.
The winter hit. He couldn't find food. He died there, hopeless. Whatever. Fuck it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't. That won't happen here. I got delis 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay here.
But there really is a lot of shit that happens in New York every single weekend, all the time. There's always something to do, and I think that's the cool shit. And that's just because of how many fucking people there are here. It's like you were saying with the traffic, and it's just really, really overpopulated. And I feel like we know it as we live here, but you don't really know it until you find yourself somewhere else that is not New York. Are you still, that being said, like New York has like one of the craziest and most active graph scenes. You go to a different state, and even if it's known for its graph, it's not like New York in terms of its activity. Are you still painting?
Yeah, all the time.
You're still very active?
Yep, all the time, yep.
And you don't ever start thinking like, what's the point, or feeling over it in any way?
Oh man, you think about that all the time actually. But with the freight stuff, it's like, I was thinking about it. There's just a difference. There's sometimes, I just don't want to stay out late. I don't want to bomb anymore. I can't stand it. I can't stand driving around with 4 people. No one has a plan, looking for spots, blah, blah, blah. Like then at the end of the night, I'm going to eat deli food. I'm going to wake up the next day feeling absolutely terrible, dehydrated, all that bullshit. And then the risk of like missing work or whatever the fuck. And then also like, you could do something big and then, what's the point? Fresh paint's going to flick. I don't give a fuck about that shit. So it's like, I think there's some people who really just love certain things, right? Like they love the feeling of being on a 15-foot ladder, right? They love that. They love the feeling of being on a billboard. That's their thing, right? For me, I do like applying paint to like brick. There's nothing better than that. But for trains, it's like I love the fact of certain things. Like I love the way railroad like rocks just feel walking on them. Like simple things like that. I love the way the tracks smell, right? I love being around like big metal structures or in between them. And I also love just the way Rust-Oleum just fucking comes out of the can, and you can just you can't feel it, but you can feel like the paint hit metal. It's a different feeling. I don't know. So I do love that about it, which is like all kind of, I don't know, like Asperger-y way, it's like weird, to think about it all like that. But I think you go out every time because there's this one thing that you love about it, right? Whether it's like a smell or it's like being high in the air or just simple things like railroad rocks or whatever.
So would you say you prefer freights
Yep.
To streets?
Yes, 100%.
Oh, for real? Has it always been that way?
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
So now when you're painting, you're just mainly painting freights as opposed to...
Yeah, I would be lying if I didn't say that applying paint to a gate, which is something you can only really do here. There's not many places in the world that you can find shutters or gates. And the way that paint goes on a gate, where it's like as you're going down with the can, it's like there's something to that. I'm like, oh, I like that, right? Like that feels pretty good to do that. But yeah, freights, 100%.
Do you?
Go ahead, bro.
No, I was just gonna ask. Do you feel like the freight scene in New York City, because, like freight scenes are more dominant in like places where there aren't cities, because that's what people have accessibility to. Do you feel like it's like oversaturated in the city, like because there's like only a limited amount of yards, you could say?
Right. I feel like graffiti is oversaturated in New York, and I feel like it looks a lot different than it probably should. But I don't know if I'm the bearer of bad news to say that, considering I'm not from New York. I wouldn't say that I've reinvented style in any way or form. But I feel like it probably doesn't look the way it should here, and that goes the same way as freights. I think there's a lot of people attached to graffiti all of a sudden for some weird reason, and I feel like maybe they should learn how to just keep the wheel rolling rather than trying to reinvent it all the time. And as far as like oversaturated of train yards in New York, yes, there are a lot of people trying to make an attempt, but what they need to learn is that their attempt is not a good attempt. And it'll never be a good attempt trying to do that in New York City in 2022. We live on an island. You have to remember that a lot of East Coast cities like Miami or New York are on an island. Things come in one way, they come out, they go the same way out. You can only bring so many trains into this area. There's not enough for everyone. There never will be enough for everyone. As Amazon gets big, things come in by truck or they come in by boat and they get broken down and they deliver it in a van. Things aren't always coming in by train anymore, even though a large popularity of our goods go back and forth by train, but they're not specifically coming into New York City that way, right? A place that used to get 10,000 cars per year now gets 3,000 cars per year. With that said, more people move here, try to paint. It just doesn't work. And there's also a big part of this is like a freight dedication, freight knowledge, all that type of stuff. And it's you have to question yourself, why would I waste my resources, time, paint to go do something and annoy a bunch of people who do this all the time just so like I can, do something dumb on a car that's going to leave and get gone over by someone else in, Chicago or Philly, they don't know. And even in New York, they're getting capped all the time. So there's people who I don't think that they have a lot of loyalty or knowledge to trains. It's just easy to go on their lunch break or after work so they don't have to stay out all night and do that type of thing.
So you said that did you say last year 10,000 came in?
There used to be probably maybe 15 years ago, there'd be 10,000 cars coming through the ports to come here, and now it's only about 3,000. And I don't know how they break that down, but in New York City, there's only one set of freight line tracks from the Bronx all the way to South Brooklyn. And they're, obviously from there, you can figure it out, obviously, pretty easy. This is no fucking mystery. It's like you can tell which places get which trains, and there's not a lot of fucking trains. So that's pretty crazy. 10 to 3 or whatever it is, yeah. It's less and less because, like you said, there's boats, there's trucks, there's just different ways of transporting shit. And that's actually something that has been on my mind. Do you think that the freight scene in the United States could be a thing of the past, meaning something that inevitably has an end because freights will become an outdated technologies, just like how different cars have just went extinct? Well, what stops more and more cars from going extinct, and what stops oh wow, we have these crazy Tesla trucks now that will deliver shit 3,000 times as fast? Do you think that could lead to a death of the freights or not really? Not with the way online purchasing is and how goods are consumed so fast by things like Amazon. Like if you get to bench a line, you'll notice like on intermodal, it's a lot of Amazon containers. It's a lot of stuff from overseas. It's a lot of, everything we have goes on a certain type of train. But as far as like other trains, yes, they, obviously in this video, there was like a segment where they made a huge mistake. The railroad made a bunch of cars that weren't going to last. There'll always be that. But the popularity of the railroad is quite actually high, but that's only for certain things like cars and goods. But certain things like box cars, they will be diminished over time. I don't know if those will always be there. Plastic is also used largely. Obviously, we're always using plastic goods. It's hard to recycle plastic, so they're constantly making more and more and more of it. But that'll never go away, right? And it's cheaper to go by freight. It's so much cheaper to go by freight, but you're there's things that happen like break-ins, and that goes with everything. Trucks get broken into, but I don't think necessarily the railroad will diminish. Actually, there's so much work to be done on the railroad that they can't actually find people to drive the trains back and forth. CSX is having a huge hard time finding people to work, literally just drive the trains back and forth. They can't find people to work. I mean, we can't find people to work anywhere. But trains are always going to move. Garbage goes through trains from New York, and they take it to Ohio and dump it, or Pennsylvania or Virginia. That'll always be a thing, but there will be a lot of cars we see just disappear over time. They won't look like they used to. I think there'll be a lot of just the same type of car, and maybe that's like 5 just cars, whereas one time you had so many beautiful type of cars, and those are just, the expiration date for those is just now here. A lifespan of a railroad car is 40 years, and then they get the opportunity to just scrap it, or they get the opportunity to refurbish it. I've seen them, refurbish a lot of cars that carry beer, per se. Those things are crazy. They look so weathered, but, you put new wheels on them and a new door, and they're good to go, right? Those just won't always be here. They'll be replaced by another car that will be the same company carrying, back and forth, and they'll be a lot stronger. And I think there'll just be a lot more fleets of just those one things.
Why is the lifetime only 40 years? What about the train gets fucked up?
Rust, the brakes, pretty much just how you drive a car and it reaches 200,000 miles on a car, and all of a sudden your car just doesn't work anymore. Oh, your iPhone operating system, you didn't upgrade it. Your iPhone just doesn't work anymore. That's how a fucking train works. It just gets beat down over time. And then the railroad also has new requirements for cars as well, that if these companies do not follow them, then they get, fined or whatever, for whatever reason, So, yeah.
That's kind of crazy that they can't find people to drive the trains, and that's like, I guess, one of their bigger issues, because I would think that wouldn't really be the issue. You know what I mean?
The railroad's hard work. You're always on call like a firefighter.
They have strange hours.
And there's strange regulations and rules to it. Really, a couple of my friends really they decided, hey, I want to work for the railroad, and the railroad sent them down to Atlanta, and now all of a sudden they work for CSX. It was just that easy, where a long time ago it was only veterans who worked for the railroad. It was hard to get a job. You had to be coming home from the army, or you had to have a way in, just like the union or whatever. And now anyone can work for the railroad, as long as you probably don't have a felony or a drug problem.
Yeah, I mean, those things takes a lot of trust, because you're essentially in charge of millions and millions of dollars of cargo. But what I've noticed is that it's not only CSX, but just labor jobs in general, because I'm still in the plumbing industry, and every year we have an apprenticeship recruitment, you know what I mean, where you get a application, you can go through the process, and less people are even going to the lines, you know what I mean. I think as generations move on, they realize that they can make money off of different means instead of working with their hands, like online businesses and all these type of entrepreneurships and all this stuff. So like labor jobs are essentially diminishing, in numbers, which is, you can take it as you want, but it's pretty crazy because I feel like there's only so much robots can do. You know what I mean? A human mind can troubleshoot things quicker, I feel,
Yep. I mean, they want robots to do everything. There's, fuck, I can't remember. What's his name? I'd have to look it up. He's an industrial designer. Basically, he's already designed a world long ago. He's dead right now, but he has designed a world that we live in where we don't have to do any work. And his plans for it made a lot of actual sense, but he said that we shouldn't really have to do things like, he said that we can make machines to literally do everything, which is interesting to think about, but then it's like, well, then what do people do with their time?
It makes me think of, you ever seen Wall-E, that cartoon, where those like overweight people are floating around in their like metal chairs sipping soda all day? I don't know. It's like a futuristic, like, what are you doing all day in a way?
Yep. Jacques Fresco is his name, actually. If you get a chance, look it up. A lot of people might laugh at some of his ways, but he was like, he has tons of theories on tons of different things. He's a socialist. He worked in New York City school. He's actually from Brooklyn. And then he did a lot of his work in Florida, I guess. I think that may be wrong. Fact check that. But he's very interesting. Like, I don't know if you watched Zeitgeist when you were like younger when it came out, episode 1, but they interviewed him for a lot of the reasons. Like, everything affects something else, and his theory for working and money and all that stuff makes one thing after another make sense. So it was up to him. Probably wouldn't even have trains, to be honest. But yeah.
What do you think about that whole like humans don't work shit?
Dude, I don't even know. What is it? What is this What is it?
No, I'm saying like would you be for that or against that? The whole robots do everything for us, and in theory we can just pursue our passions.
I don't even know what everyone would do. I don't even think anyone does anything now. So it's like, what the fuck? What would everyone do? He would basically, like Jacques was saying, like, oh, you would create art. Even you would just create art just to give it to someone. You wouldn't sell your art. So then why would that's so hard to think about? Why would I do anything?
No, it's like a total shift.
Yeah, it's just like, why would we're not born to we're born to understand. We're born and then we're trained to understand. You need to do something to make money.
I feel like that would only work if everyone just took like psychedelics and like it became some type of like hippie commune where people were like, dude, like this is for you, man.
Yeah,
you know, like through love and peace.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, I don't need gifts. I need real shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But aside from all that, so no, you don't think that the freights will come to an end because they actually need the freights, and it's a very economical way to ship shit. Now, do you think that just the same way that they tackled the graffiti in New York City subway, they would ever do with the freights?
You won't ever be able to do it. There's not enough resources to patrol it. And to be honest, a lot of people who work for the railroad give a fuck less. It's always like the police that are hired, or it's depending on where you live. The rail cops can be way more serious, like in Florida, or just different places in the middle of nowhere where people see you park your car and you go in, and the local authorities have to come. But as far as like bigger cities, if you've been into train yards in like Oakland, LA, even New York or Philly, no one gives a shit. It's a heyday. They'll never be able to do it. They've done things like raise the numbers higher, but even then there's still reflectors that get painted over, and the railroad gets fined if the reflectors are painted over. So it's someone's job to put new reflectors on it every time it's painted, right? So it's essentially creating some weird little job for someone, but you can't get rid of it. It won't ever happen. There's just too many. You'd have to fence in everything. Fences cost so much money. Someone will cut the fence anyways. It would be literally impossible.
Yeah, it's not like it's not as much as a closed system as like the New York City subway is. It's like, it literally spans Mexico, Canada, all of the United States, every single state, every single city, every single town. So to stop it, you'd have to do a nationwide thing.
Yeah. People ride in on freights like from Mexico to, people are smart enough from Mexico to the United States to tape drugs under the trains and understand that, hey, that train will leave this time, end up here, grab the drugs, right? Is a free mode of transportation for a lot of things. But yeah, it will never end.
What's been your experience with rail cops?
Nothing crazy. Only earlier on, before New York City became this playground per se, a lot of the train yards just weren't actually cool to go to. Freights were, the yards are always considered burning, scolding hot by all the OGs. Like, oh yeah, we don't even go there anymore, right? Before all that, there was definitely people cared a lot more. New York has two, CSX brings in the cars from out of state and they give them to the local line. The local line didn't care. CSX cared. They complained that all the cars are getting painted all the time. Those people probably don't work for the railroad anymore, considering the fact that all the cars in New York City that come in get blasted every single fucking day, and then they leave with graffiti on them. So yeah, they did build like a little thing, and then Vandal Squad had to get involved, and that was that. But that was a long time ago.
Even at the spots where it's clear that this is like a spot where people paint freights, they don't give a shit?
No, they don't care. Actually, one of the workers the other day, talking to them about how they actually need help for people working there. They're like, we can't even find people to work the local line here. They have like a bunch of drug problems. We had to fire 8 people. I'm like, Jesus, like this is going to be like an easier job to do and actually a cool job. You get to be outside all day. You get to be like around like heavy. I don't know why people would think they are above that, but it's actually good pay too. By 20 years, you could be making 3 figures just working for the railroad, connecting brakes, driving a train around. Yeah, it's not the most like exciting, but I mean, at least like you're outside, you're like working with your hands, right? So
I heard some rumor in Brooklyn, I think it was a few months ago, where essentially the cops left a clean car in the tracks and they were waiting for people to hit it, and they just like swarmed in, or I don't even know.
Oh, that was with all the old subway cars. They were bringing them to scrap them somewhere, and I forget where they were going to scrap them, but it was a bunch of old subway MTA models. They were putting them on like shipping containers, and they were leaving them on the docks, and obviously people were hitting them to actually just get the flicks, right? And then the second time they brought them through, they actually were down there, which I don't understand why they would actually care, because they're just going to go get chopped up, put in a gondola and shipped to Mexico or something, unless there's some ulterior motive. Someone's going to turn those into some weird hotels or like weird little like scenery type thing. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was actually true though. So
how do you genuinely feel when you clearly have put in a lot of time and effort into not just painting freights, but studying freights, studying freight history, doing homework on the spots, understanding not just like in a graffiti aspect, but kind of more in like literally how freights work, what they're used for, how many cars come in, where they go, etc. And you see random people just start painting freights, come in and kind of just maybe ruin the yard or not respect it as much as say you do, and you've kind of been here for longer than a lot of the people who will maybe move to New York or even just come into a yard that you're at. How do you genuinely feel when you see that? Does it disgust you? Do you give a shit or?
No. It's absolutely repulsive, to be honest. I cannot stand it. It drives me insane, actually. It's only here, and it's been the last maybe 6 or 7 years in New York where this popularity of like, I don't know where it comes from, but I'm going to go hit a car, and you don't really understand what you're doing. You don't understand what you're painting over. You don't even understand what you're painting. And thank God a lot of people in New York don't really give a fuck about freight train. I don't want to waste my paint on that bullshit. Yeah, that's great. Keep that motif going. Keep painting the streets. Get your name. Why wouldn't you move to New York and paint the greatest city where graffiti was born? Get your name up in the streets. Why wouldn't you do that first? Develop a style, practice, and then you're just going to go fucking hit freights. The ball game's changed, in 93, freights would go by and people would be begging for fucking graffiti to be on a train. Now you'd be lucky to find one clean car, and there's people just capping stuff. The amount of work that some people go in, and I was lucky enough to be surrounded by people when I was getting into trains that were mean to me. I think that's the greatest tool someone could do to someone else, because if you're trying to do this thing, graffiti or whatever, and people don't let you in, that really separates you from the 10 of your other friends that are trying to do it, and that's going to earn your respect, right? If you keep coming back, you keep trying to get better, you keep coming back with more paint, that says a lot about you, right? But this day and age, when you're like, that's wrong, you can't do that, then you're the bully, you're the bad guy. I don't have a fucking problem being that at all. I don't have a problem saying what needs to be said, doing what needs to be done. People need to get painted over. They need to be told they can't come here anymore. They need to be told all of that type of stuff, or they're never going to learn. You can't just do what you always want. It's a huge disgrace for all the people who have fucking put in the time and effort to pave the way. Yeah. And all the generations after us need to do is just follow up on that. It's the bar is so low. Just pick up your cans before you leave after you paint up. What? I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. I mean, that bar is so low. Anywhere else in the world, you'd get punched in the head. But here in these bigger cities, it's just like, yeah, like do what you want. And then you can't say anything because there's then, whatever. And it's just like, I don't know. It's not going to really fly under my watch. We got to keep it rolling for all the people who like really set these rules for freight train graffiti, and they aren't really made to be broken because the rules already worked. I mean, just keep your yard clean. Don't let workers see you. You could be cool with workers, just be caught, just all these simple things that people just don't follow because they think they're in like a bigger city like New York or Philadelphia or whatever. And honestly, I'm just getting tired of it, to be honest.
You see it a lot in New York specifically?
Yeah, everywhere you go, you see it, up and down. You see it, and it's just getting annoying. I just don't understand why people would want to waste their time, doing that. You could tell, you can judge a book by its cover when you can tell someone's really trying to do this thing properly. Their bag is packed properly, they're dressed properly. If you're in there with a skateboard and headphones and like 12 beers, it's like you're already not welcome, right? Like that's just bullshit. People are gonna probably watch this and be like, well, people can do whatever they want. Well, I'm telling you that they can't. It's just as simple as that. That there's a people don't do that in the clean train world. There's so many rules. They've gone above and beyond to craft a system for clean trains that they won't even talk about. It's just so much more than even this. If you want to throw your cans on the ground, your caps on the ground, just paint a gate, paint a roof, leave your cans up there, do that shit. But there is an art to taking care of the freight world, right? And it's gone to hell because the people who have crafted this are now too old with kids to like really give a fuck and be out there fighting and being like, you can't fucking do that. And it's not going to work through Instagram, and it's not going to do this. You really need to be out there like doing that in person. And then the people that they put under their wing are like, well, we've had enough. We took a beating from them. All right, just do whatever you want. And that's kind of what I'm noticing, that there's like this generational gap in the freight world where it's like, this mid-school, you could say, is like, oh, it's not that important. We learned that like it'll never get us nowhere, and painting 1,000 cars a year isn't gonna like get us any money, but you don't do it for that. And people who aren't, they aren't like trying to really live and breathe freight culture probably should just back away, and they should just go, like, this really isn't for me. I'm not trying to like come up here and do the best I can every time I come up here. I'm not trying to be the most up on freights. If I don't really like trains, I don't even know why they're here. I don't know what they carry. I don't know what these numbers mean. I don't know why this light is flashing. If you don't want to learn that and you don't want to respect that, then you should just see yourself out of it immediately. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that a style of like, I guess you could call it gatekeeping, or just, I guess actually caring for the culture that you're in. And because you do care about the culture that you're in, like kind of like the way that you do, and a lot of people care about their own specific cultures, gatekeeping is kind of a way, I think, to really school the new people coming in. And you said earlier that it was like one of the best gifts that, or best things that could have happened to you, like someone being mean to you, because that makes you. And I kind of agree with you. You know what I mean? Because realistically, like, not just in graffiti, but anything that I myself have been interested in like the era of time where I was just first getting into these things, like that makes it all the more special because it's not just, if something's just publicly available to everybody, it's no longer special. Special usually just means like it's more rare, harder to achieve, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that one of the things that is really cool and respectable about graffiti is a bunch of the knowledge of the history, is a bunch of like paying respect to the people who came before you, the rules that are there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Freights is no different. Obviously, we're living in a time period now where like if you shit on somebody, like a lot of people have a problem with that, which I understand, but there's also like ways to do shit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like the world is not like the nicest place. There's obviously like cold, harsh realities. And I'm not saying that like the freight scene has to be like the cold, harsh reality of the world, but also you can't just have people come and, disrespect some shit that they don't really know or understand. And like I myself, I've never been a huge like person super into freights. However, I've always been aware of the fact that that's a culture in and of itself that's separate from street graffiti, as well as the fact that like I am understanding of kind of like, oh, I'm going into a territory that like I'm not as well versed in as in the streets. And like just me knowing that alone, I'll, kind of like maneuver differently. Something that's crazy about freights is that the people who are into them, like really into them, I'm not just saying like they just paint, but like they're really into them, really are knowledgeable about the history. I would say even more than like what street writers, like pure street writers will know. Like they know about the surface they're painting really deeply. It's obvious, like I said earlier, that you're one of those people, about a bunch of shit about freights. How did you first start getting into learning all this stuff? I'm sure you learned it through just a span of years. Here. You get a little information here, a little information there. But how has the process been like? And just tell me about that.
I feel like freight stuff it's almost the luck of a draw. Like, you can. That's why I say people should probably like bomb their city, but not everyone has a city to bomb all the time. But it's like someone's yard is always their yard, and especially when you get closer to these metropolitan areas like New Jersey or Philadelphia or New York or upstate New York or somewhere, unless those trains were literally in your backyard and you never saw anyone go there, that spot is probably someone else's spot. So it's almost like a luck of a draw of like, if you go, this has happened to me a bunch of times when I first moved to New York City, or I'd go to New Jersey and I'd go into someone's yard and, oh, this doesn't look like anyone paints here. Next day, wake up to 10 phone calls and then get on that phone call and there's 20 dudes yelling at you on speaker, never fucking come back, no, I'm gonna kill you, whatever. And you're like, all right, cool. I respect that actually, because like you guys did the homework and like I don't even belong here. So you kind of like weasel your way through and you try to figure out where you belong, and those who stick around. But like I always wanted to I saw trains, a friend introduced me to it, and I didn't know that there was all these things about them, and then someone took me under their wing, and that was the thing. Someone took me under their wing, right? I feel like a lot of people don't have that mentorship, and then you don't learn about all that. I feel like it's something handed down generation by generation or person to person, and then when that person was done with me, they handed me off to someone else, and that person knew more than the other person, right? So it's like that's where the information came in. I remember being with one of my, best friends now, and he knows everything. He's been painting. He's one of the earliest writers to paint, and I remember like him even before we started the can even came out, don't fucking take your camera out. No flash photos in here. And like, I'm like, oh damn, okay. It's like simple shit like that sticks with you, right? Like, don't ever do this, don't ever do that. Or you see like how he's reacting to certain things, like, we don't park here. This is how we do the bag drop. this is how we do this. You don't paint that, you paint this. Most people now are like, all these rules and shit aren't for me. But for me, I was like very aware, like that is cool. And then to see people get excited like himself when you check spots, and you can only see the tops of the cars when you're driving by. There's trains in there. There's trains. Okay, here's how you get in there. Here's how you check the spots. You have to check all this, all these things you do to do freight graffiti, and someone has to teach you that. And if you don't know, it's going to be a hard road for you. But if you keep coming back and back for more, someone will respect that. And there's so much working against you from the very minute you decide to do it anyways. It's like you need paint. You need almost infinity amount of paint to do trains. You need a good style. You need all this stuff. Everyone's toy in the beginning, but it's like, how bad of a toy are you, right? Like, is it bad enough to literally piss someone off in that yard? Like, or is it like this guy's trying, right? So it's like, from the very beginning, everyone was mean to me. I thank them for that. I thank them all the time for that. If I didn't have that, I don't know, like, if it would have kept me going or not, right? Like, I guess it's a certain, like, jock mentality. It's like, you're not gonna, fucking... There is, like, a sense of jock mentality to freight stuff, or even graffiti in general. It's all ego-driven anyways. But it's like, if you like to win, then you just keep going and going. You're not going to just give up. And then you're going to try to earn your respect and just, do it the right way, the way that they said to do it. And it's not hard, So those mentors, it's really, that's like the thing, mentorship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Mentorship is very important, I think, especially in graffiti, because it sets a strong foundation, and it can make your, like, let's say, graffiti career, quote unquote, go from like you developing a style which will take you 10 years, or you could develop it in like a year and a half, or have a strong idea at least of what you're going to do. Right. And like you said earlier, like the sad part is that a lot of these old school dudes that have been in the game for so long, a lot of them, like you said, are just, whether they have a family or they're not in it anymore. So if you have someone in your life that is like that, like an old school dude that knows about all this stuff, or even like you, it doesn't have to be like someone like aesthetically old. It's just someone that knows their shit, right? Like, you have to respect and cherish that person, because if you really are into this, like, that stuff will change your career, and like you will become, like, you'll set a high standard for yourself.
You know what it is too. I feel like even just not that many eras ago, it was hard to come by like a mentor. It was hard to come by knowledge. It's hard to come by meeting even people who fucking did graph or did what you're doing. Now I don't think that's the case. I know kids who started writing legit like a year and a half ago, who are fully I guess mentored, accepted by not just like some pretty sick people, but also just like the entire community. Whereas like when I started painting, like, I didn't know anyone who wrote for so many years. I never thought I would know anyone who wrote ever, because I was like, how am I ever going to meet anyone who writes when there's nowhere to meet anyone who writes? And you know what I mean? And I feel like that's a huge different thing now. And I think that causes people to not that they don't like cherish, I guess, their mentors, because I think that they still do, but it is a different thing. If you get a fucking mentor after 2 weeks of you knowing what graph is, it's different if you wrote for like 6-7 years and until you finally met someone who wrote, and then you're like, oh shit, sick, this is dope, because I finally know someone who knows about this shit, not because I told them and they were my homie outside of graph, but because they like had the kind of like the same process that I did, learning everything by themselves. And like, I came up in like a more internet era where like it's not as crazy as it is now, but there was videos online, there was like forums and stuff like that, but it was still even then like harder to come across stuff than it is now, and that's pretty crazy. Freights is a crazy thing. Like, we talked to, this episode hasn't come out yet, maybe it has by now, I don't know, but we talked to Learn YME. Okay. And he was telling us like when he started painting freights with him and his crew, there was like, to his knowledge, if I'm not mistaken, it was 50 to 100 people max in the entirety of America that were painting freights. And like every car, it would be hard to find cars that like type weren't clean. Now it's hard to go in and find cars that are clean. Yeah. and he was just telling us like just how much the freight scene has changed, because when he was doing it, it was really like him and his small group of friends in this almost secluded area of
Yeah.
America, whereas now it's like the fucking train's coming into New York and it's leaving shitted on.
Yeah.
And it's going to be clear actually that one just left New York,
Yeah.
because it's going to be just painted way too much, honestly.
Yeah.
How do you feel that applies to you? Like, how long have you been painting freights, and how has the freight scene changed even just since you started?
I think I've been painting trains since 2007, which it feels weird to sit here and try to be like a voice of reason for all of this stuff, because there's people who are still doing it that are like the OGs and they're still painting. But I feel like there's an opportunity to come on here and, you know, learns like OG, you know, like those guys are OG, and a lot of people in my crew OG, but they get interviewed all the time. You're not hearing from many people from like a mid-school era or even like a new era speaking on like understanding this. And I guess like younger kids may need like a new voice. Like I'm tired of seeing the same interviews with people all the time, you know, like I'd rather read or listen to someone that I'm more familiar with that's like a new voice, you know, like that maybe a kid that's bombing hard. What is his perspective on, you know, this stuff? But yeah, you know, I think that what was the second part?
It was just, how has the freight scene changed since you started writing in
shit.
07?
I mean, internet's a blessing and the curse. Like it's good. You know, you get photos of everything. Usually 90% of the time it's bad photos anyways. It's some account like high drinking venture 420 666, really bad photos, but it's like I don't care about the photo. I don't take photos of my stuff. I don't care about their photos. I don't care if someone sends me photos. I did it. I was there for it. Unless it's like a great photo, like which it usually isn't, which I don't know how there's not good photos, because like the iPhone just takes a good photo anyways. But yeah, you know, there's a million people who have dictated on our culture via iPhone or internet, being like, you know, we take the photos of the trains. You guys are losers. You guys just take photos. That's not what this is about. It's about actually going out there and doing it. As far as that, these threads, you know, even now, Instagram changed again to where reels are a thing, right? Like now that's something everyone's going to make. These things dictate, and they're easy for people to navigate towards. Like a kid can just be like graffiti, and now the phone knows to give you all of these things. And if those things aren't like put together well, then you have a wrong idea of how this thing is supposed to be going, right? Like, especially if it's not biased, right? If you're not only showing good graffiti, right? You're showing every type of thing, then you think that like this is maybe how it should look, when really people already figured this out. They figured it out during the subway era. Those things are the things we still do. So it's more about how people get into this. It's changed, and that knowledge that we've already talked about. I feel like it was a lot harder to get into everything via, you know, before forums, whatever. You really had to do something, right? So you could write someone a letter, or, you know, I've had people be like, I'll trade you this for hard copies. I want hard copies of things. That's cool to me. That means you really, you know, you developed the photo or whatever, you stood out there all day. The phone is just a tool for everything to be easier. And it's been said 1,000 times before, you know, I don't know what else is left to be said about it, but I just hope that kids can be like, or like a newer generation can take note from some of these things, like stuff that you guys are doing, or look up videos like this, which a lot of people don't know about this, right? You know, the new documentary, you know, Rolling Thunder that just came out. Maybe they can watch that. You know, a lot of people don't even know that documentary is based off the Freight Train book, which is like the first book I racked from Barnes and Nobles along with Subway Art. And it says everything you need to know in there. It's like this thick, and, you know, it's like this big, and it has hundreds and thousands of photos and interviews and all this shit, and it breaks it all down. And I've asked people, oh, you don't have the Freight Train book? No, I don't have it. What the fuck don't you have the fucking book for? Like, it's $5 on Amazon, you know, whatever. You could steal it from Barnes and Nobles or whatever the fuck. So yeah, that I used to just glamorize that thing, right? It's like, man, and then, years later, it's like now I'm crew with some of those people that have interviews, which is like insane to me. But yeah, that's how it's changed. It's the way people do things, right? And that's for everything. I'm sure you guys are into the fighting stuff. It's probably the same way. Maybe that's still the same way. I don't know. I wouldn't go in there and be like, I'm gonna kick all your guys' asses, right? You go in there with respect. You learn how to fight, right? You don't go into like a college room and tell your professor that they're wrong, right? You kind of just like you kind of learn and then you make your own adjustments. That's how this stuff should be too. It's like, you gotta try to do what's already been done well and then make your assessment of it.
So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck is that shit he just picked up? So what is that DVD? And we watched that shit previous to this. And yeah, so what's up with that?
This is a video called Reefer Madness, and it's about this guy Fatso who goes on this journey to just find a certain type of train, which is a solid cold, and find the last one, because when he was a kid, he used to see those in his hometown. And I think this DVD is something you can still maybe get offline, but anyone trying to get into freight graffiti should probably watch this. And this thing alone depicts so much dedication from these types of people that, like, even in the New York section, there's some people that live in New York that might not even know the New York guys because they just painted trains, but they're out there day after night after night after night still painting, and they're still painting now, some of them. So yeah, it depicts like, oh man, it's crazy rewatching it because I wanted you guys to rewatch it, and then you could form questions. But after I watched it again, like 10 or 12 years later, I was like, this stuff still holds weight, right? Like some of these guys, they've just put in so much effort. The names that are on some of those old cars are the names that are still on cars now, and they're still going. And people need to understand that. So yeah.
It's crazy. You try to find that online, and I'm not sure if you can, but for me, I couldn't.
Okay.
It's pretty hard to do. And obviously it was like a pretty solid, pretty big thing when it came out.
Yeah.
But now there's just so many videos that like the average person's not going to care about a video that came out forever ago, because every 3 days there's a video coming out. So it is really crazy, but there is like something to those types of videos, more long format, hard copy, especially when they came out at a time period where there was like really nothing. Like I think that's why videos like State Your Name were just so crazy, because there wasn't shit like that before. It was really like there was, but like, you know what I mean? Like It's starting, you're getting closer and closer to the source, to the root of like, this was one of the first of its kind, first for like New York City street bombing, where they're talking and they're each showing their personality, and like that video kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
They're very different, but just like the approach to it is like really crazy. You mentioned about being crew with some of the people who were like getting interviewed in these books and stuff like that. In Rolling Like Thunder, they showed the beef of like WH, ETC, mainly on freights and stuff like that. So what do you have to say about that? You're WH. What's the deal with that, and how do you feel about the way that it was shown in that documentary?
I think that video was like more made for the general public, right? If I'm not wrong or right, I think it was made to just kind of show that like there was a bad guy and there was a villain in that instance, when there really is, like, it's not the case. But if someone watched it, my mom could probably understand, like, oh, these guys, they're like, there's a bad guy here and these guys are the good guys or whatever. But that's really not the case. And it's cool that was highlighted in that film, because, beef on trains is a real thing. But this beef is probably one of the biggest beefs on trains in all of the span of freight graffiti in America. And what I could say about it is that what they said in there wasn't actually like, you don't have enough time to really go back all these years and, this guy did this and this is how it started. But what I can say, that it just wasn't like someone was like, you're a dumbass, your graffiti sucks. It was a lot more than that. And it started pre or, you know, when 12 ounce was like kind of like a hotbed for graffiti. I don't know if you guys ever looked at it, but there was a Metalheads forum on there, and that was for freights, and it started in there with a bunch. That was a way to communicate because there wasn't really Facebook yet or Instagram. So like I said, blessing and a curse. This thing exists. People can post their own photos. It started there, and now we're here. And literally, you know, it's paved the way for graffiti and freight graffiti in general. You know, you ask anyone who's really into freight graffiti, they will mention WH hands fucking down. And that's not even biased. When I was painting, those are the names I would always see. I would see them all the fucking time. And, you know, it was always good stuff. And not to mention that they birthed some people's careers that went on to still do graffiti now, and they're not even WH. A lot of people who you see now and some people who are even dead were WH at one point. It's a really respected thing, and it's a shame that we're in this situation, but it's never going to end unless everyone dies on both sides. And that's the thing with fucking freight graffiti is that, like, you know, you get into an altercation in New York and it's like, meet up. You can't do that with someone who lives on the other side of the country. And this thing has gone on for so long that there's no way to ever end it because there's no way to tell if it could end, right? Even if someone gets their ass kicked, even if someone gets shot, stabbed, there's this paper trail of evidence for all of this stuff that's happened. There's a goddamn documentary out on Showtime where it shows two people in this thing. All you can do is now just use paint, and that's both sides have infinite people that are painting, infinite amount of supplies. They'll never stop. These people are diehard. It'll just go on forever, and literally until people are literally 6 feet under. People on there, no one on our side has dropped our crew, and no one's dropped it on their side. Tons of people have dropped the crew. They've gotten rid of the ETC name on there. They don't want anything to do with it anymore. They don't want all their hard work. WH has some of the most influenced freight writers in the entire, country. Their work is still on the lines. The history of their work is being erased. Obviously, people are pissed off about that. Shit from 92, 93, 94. These guys, people who weren't even born yet they're capping that stuff. They feel bad about it. They don't want to do it, but it's not going to end. And I think people out there, I see comments online, and there's almost like pages dedicated to it. Why is this happening? It doesn't matter why it's happening. It just know that you're just going to see it forever. And that's the only way that it's going to happen. I mean, in the thing, it's like, we're going over whole cars, and how much crazier does it get? It's not even that crazy, like you just go over stuff. Like, it's just, it's like, nah, oh shit, he went over my whole car. It's like, fuck, like, oh, I have to stop. I'm like, no, that means
it was whole cars over whole cars.
Yeah, it's like, that's not crazy. Like, that's nothing compared to like what people do on a day-to-day basis. And this crew, they just won't give up. People aren't that old. You can paint till you're dead. You can paint a train till you're dead, right? It's not like, streets where it's like, oh shit, like I can't be 75 getting arrested or 60 fucking falling down a fucking flight of stairs or whatever. You could walk up to a train when you're 60 and paint it. So this beef will literally live as long as like people can walk on 2 feet, and maybe even if they're in a wheelchair, maybe they'll fucking still be doing it. I don't know, but I think that's one thing people need to know. I could get into the history of it, but it's just like, and then, names start popping up and important information that's not even really that relevant. Just know that, like, I think people just need to understand that, like, that film made it seem like it could be like a handshake, and then maybe these guys will stop doing what they're doing. It's just not going to happen. Another thing is that, Jesus, like there's just so much to it. I think that it's sad. It's sad to see some of the things happening. Like I said before, that literally like some of my favorite writers, I've seen some of their cars pull in and there's an ETC straight letter over it, and like, dude, they know, they have messaged people in WH and called them and been like, we literally look up to you guys. I feel bad doing this. There's that whole side of people see what's going on. They see ghouls and they see phone and they see these guys that like have created something so crazy, you know, and their shit has just gone over by some bullshit all over, like kind of, you know, a petty beef. But WH has never been one to give in and give up. They've been to war many of times over things, and this is just one of those things. And like I said before, a meetup to squash it, I don't even know how that would work. But it's just never gonna happen. It's just like it's not even in the realm. It's just not gonna happen. It doesn't even matter. It's just everyone has to die, and that's it. As funny as that is, literally we do and they do, and then that's when, and then we don't get gone over anymore. I have to pass away for someone to respect my pieces from here on out. Like, don't go over the dead. Everyone knows you don't go. Someone in their crew has died. We respect his pieces now. We used to go over them. We now respect his pieces because he's dead. He died during this beef, not because of the beef, but he's dead, you know, and we will respect his stuff. So that means, like, literally, that's just how it has to go from here on out. Or you drop the crew. If you drop the crew, then, you know, people won't go over you. But not everyone got the memo. Not everyone gets the memo. So, you know, someone in Texas who didn't get the memo because they're not in the talking to everyone all the time. Trains might still in. They're still capping them. It comes back online, or it goes back into someone else's spot. Oh, you guys are still ragging us. That is kind of what happens on freights, is that it just doesn't end. And you gotta understand, it's like 50 people versus 25 people. It's no one, and then their friends are ragging, and everyone else, you know, everyone's taken a side at some point, and they're doing things for other people. So it's just never gonna end.
So how often do you get pictures sent to you of your stuff that's capped?
I just told people to stop sending me it. I don't give a shit anymore. I actually told people, like, literally my best friends, just don't even send me anything, period. Like, even if it's good, or I don't even care. Like, I like word of mouth from people who work for the railroad, or for people who actually bench trains, which is the way you're supposed to see a graffiti. It's like, you know, Ichabod said the lines don't lie. It's like the most true quote. It's when you go bench, who's up is who's up. There's no other way around it. I like that. Like, I like when someone was like, I've been benching all week and you're up. Okay, that's all I needed to hear. You're up more than everyone else. Okay, cool. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing then. Someone goes, I didn't really see you. Oh, I'm pissed. Now I need to fucking paint more, right? That's the whole game. If I go bench myself and I don't go by, then it's like, you didn't do enough this year. You didn't do enough at all. You did it. Everyone else was up besides you. Even though it's not really how it is, but that's just like, that's the game, right? Do more. The object is more. So
it is insane how much you have to paint freight to really be up every time a line goes by.
It's crazy.
And there are motherfuckers who are really up every time a line goes by.
There is.
It is really crazy. I don't know what the number is, but it's just like people really make a actual like career out of it. Like, they do it as if it's their full-time job.
Yep.
A lot of the times it's not even time spent actually painting, but just like prep work, doing homework on spots, scoping out things, learning things, and getting flicks or whatever. Like, there's just so much that goes behind it. That's something to me that I think is, me personally, I think that if you're really, really up on freights to the point where every time a line goes by, you're on it in any part of the country, that's next level shit. That has to be harder than going all city in New York. Like,
yeah,
1,000%. Like, how many people have done that? Like, in freight, not that many.
It's a handful of people, and you can go all city with 2 carts and maybe a couple months of dedication of your time. Freights, so as soon as you decide to apply that paint to a car, the amount of things that's working against you, rather than just painting a gate, the amount of things that's working against you once this paint literally comes out of the can, is that, you know, there's a buff. The train could derail. The weather could, you know, some toy could go over it. You have beef. It pulls away. You don't get to finish it. Acquiring paint, just to do the actual amount of graffiti that you need to do is astronomical. The ways people get paint without racking it, going, all types of ways, going to fucking, farmers markets, fucking garage sales, bargain, all those types of things. There's just so much, the date, we talked about it earlier where they like, cars getting scrapped. There's just, there's so much even before you actually get to do your piece, and to do that year after year after year. And not a lot of people are built for that. I can tell you single-handedly, there's people who won't paint in the cold. You can't just take 6 months off on the East Coast and not paint. You have to paint. Like, you have to be out there in 12-degree weather. You have to. You have to. There's no other way around it. Oh, I want to paint just in the summer when it's nice out. Okay, yeah, cool. 50 trains, 100 trains a year, that's not getting you anywhere. You might as well not even try. If you just like to have like a good time and a nice peaceful session and paint your 50 pieces a year, cool, you're not going to be up. You can make your Instagram account, which a lot of these people do, post their 50 trains a year, then repost them when they get benched, and then repost them when their friends send them. And it makes it seem, I don't want to name any names. I can make a lot of fucking names of people who do that, but people in New York, definitely. But there's a lot of people who make it seem like they're out there actually applying paint to a fucking train. They're absolutely not. They're not doing it because, like we said before, there's a lot working against you, and it's longevity, it's consistency. The amount of if you guys ever watched Infamy, they interviewed Jason there. He's the freight rider of the video, and how he talks about doing the J on every side of the car. There's not a lot of J's left, and he did thousands and thousands and thousands.
Isn't that crazy?
And then that's crazy. As soon as you give up that little period, you have a kid, or you got to plan a wedding, you get married, you take off 2 years, you get an injury, or you just find another fucking hobby and you decide to come back. You're going to come back to a lot of things just not being there.
Well, you said that it was like it was that 40-year cycle. You got to think that every year is some car's 40-year cycle.
Exactly.
So every year they're going out. And another thing that is crazy is that in the streets, it's like acceptable to just do fills and tags. Like you could be really up with even just, you don't have to do fills, like outlines and tags. But on freights, like it's more of the culture is you have to really produce like a work.
Yeah.
Like you got to straight up do like something impressive.
Yeah.
Not to say that volume of outlines and tags isn't impressive, but it's like a different thing to straight up do a straight up piece. So like, yeah, you could do like maybe, like 10, 12, 13, 14 fill-ins a night. Like, can you do 10, 12 real deal pieces? Probably not.
Right.
So that's another thing. And not to mention that like you said, like doing 100 cars in a year, that's like nothing. Like I know kids who for years did freights, and I know they did what I considered at the time a lot, and I still consider it a lot of freights, but it's not a lot depending on like relative to what you're trying to achieve. I never see their shit.
Yep.
And I know that they painted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that just goes to show how much you have to paint. Like one time I drove to pretty much Florida, and then I parked. I was doing some shit, whatever. I parked at some random parking lot. It was pitch black. I just picked a random. I was gonna sleep in the car. I went to sleep. Woke up. The sun was like coming up or was up or whatever, and I'm like, okay, word. I look out my car window. I was alone, and there was a fucking ICHABOD end to end. Like, I was like, that moment stood out to me so much because I'm like, like I was in New England where of course I see like ICHABOD up. Then I literally don't look at nothing, like pretty much driving all the way down. I don't see nothing, whatever, go to sleep, wake up, and I see that. And it's not just like a whatever thing. It's like a really well done end to end. And I was like, holy shit, like you had to have done so much stuff. Or even the other day, we were chilling by that river upstate.
Yeah.
And a car, I'm like, yo, let's just sit and watch this
exactly.
go by. We watch it go by.
It's like the last car was an ICHABOD.
I was like, I don't really know any of these people on this, to be honest. So I'm like, I was thinking like, some of these heads are pretty good. So they probably painted quite a lot to be good. Yeah. But I still never heard of them.
Yep.
And then Ichabod at the end, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so
like,
stupid.
like of course, you know,
This
like
is
the
fucking
one name
crazy.
that like you're like, of course that would be there. It's like a fucking serial number on a train.
It's insane. And actually, we were driving. We drove a few times from here to SF and LA and back, just doing like podcast stuff. And we saw you. We would see cars from far, far away, and you were up on honestly a lot of them.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. I was gonna send you. I don't know. Did I send you a picture?
No, probably not. It was good you did it. I don't care. But yeah, no, Ichabod's a monster. He really invented that. What he didn't, you know, Cap kind of did. Honestly, there's a lot of people who embody what Cap did in Star Wars, where it's more, right? More. I want to be on every car, even if it's not a piece. I want to do my throw up on every car. That makes a lot of sense. That premise still stands, right? Ichabod took that, ran with it. There used to be a photo on 12 ounce on the forums where it was a mile long of cars that were sitting, and he had hit every single one of them. It was like a dude, the photo is crazy. It still sticks out to me. But that idea, like Jace hitting do a piece, a nice piece, then I'm gone. You're not going to see me. Boom, J, everything. That holds a lot of weight, right? You know, because it doesn't matter. You're just doing an outline, a tag, or whatever. It can get gone over, but there's hundreds of more of them, and people like you guys are gonna see him. Whatever Ichabod did, you know, he has whole car. He has everything from whole cars to streaks. He touches all bases, and you need to do whatever you can. If it's even picking up a rock off the ground and scratch on the fucking car, like, you know, map style, like, you know, fucking whatever you can, just fucking do what you can to get up on all the cars. You know, a lot of people don't enjoy that part of it though, right? Like that's a whole other level of doing trains, but you know, that's how you get up. I mean, that's the only way, you know. And there's not a lot, but I'd say there's probably 25 people in the country that do that, and you see them on every line that comes in. And there's other people who like to do 100 a year, and that's cool too. They're good at what they do, but you're not going to be up on every single line. And you can't be, you know. There's a lot of people who paint for the last 25 years, and they might not have good lines in the town they live in, and the cars might not even go West Coast. They might just stick around the Midwest. They might stick around Midwest to East Coast. They might never touch, you know, West Coast. And people out there like, I don't know who the fuck this is, if you ask around, right? So it's all about really, all that knowledge still keeps coming back, you know, like, this is what you should hit, this is what you should paint, this is when and why. And those guys with that knowledge, you know, it can be handed down in a useful way. So yeah, you know, fucking Ichabod. Wow. Did you guys interview him yet?
No, but that's the plan.
Yeah, cool.
Which would be really cool.
That'd be cool.
It's crazy too what he chose, like the TikTok style is like, it's just perfect for freights. The speed that they're moving at, and it's perfect for freights. It's super legible, repetitive, over and over and over.
If you ever listen to his there was a podcast called Crime Time. I don't know if they still do it anymore, but he has one on there where he speaks through his speak and spell.
Is it the robot thing?
Yeah,
I listened to that.
That's amazing.
It's crazy.
It's literally one of the best freight interviews I've ever heard. It's just like really straight to the point, and the answers are really funny. I don't know if it's because it's through the speak and spell or what, but a lot of the stuff he says in there still holds true. I mean, he says the lines don't lie in there. I mean, it's really true. So
when I first found that interview, I don't know how old I was. It had to be at least 10 years ago. And I swore on everything that I was the only person, like, ever to have found that. And I was like, is this really him?
Yeah.
It's a fucking robot. And I couldn't believe that I found that interview online. Now I know that, like, a lot of people have heard it. But at the time, I'm like, yo, I got to tell people about this. Like, why has no one said anything about this? Like, why has nobody said that this interview exists? This is fucking crazy. Yeah. It's a fucking Ichabod talking about painting freights and getting into them and chilling at yards when he was younger. And he talks about, like, when he started painting, and I couldn't believe it. And the fact that it was in a robot voice. I thought it was cool how he was in Rolling Like Thunder, wearing, like, the Bad Brains tee and the mask by the fire. It was like some sense. Kill Bill, like, it was really cool. It's crazy. But yeah, on another note, I was gonna ask you about BMX real quick. If I don't really know shit about BMX, I know about skating, and I know that with the coming of social media and Instagram, skating changed so much. Like it just changed. Everything about it changed. And I was wondering if the same thing happened with BMX.
Yeah, 100%. 100. The whole dynamic's different. The kid who skateboards is a lot different than the kid who BMXs, right? The way they get into it, the whole culture of it. I mean, BMX in its heyday when it was, born was, a cultural icon of things. Everyone, you run into someone, oh, I used to ride, someone's dad or whatever. Used to be really cool. Now it doesn't feel so fucking cool anymore. It's not a lot of culture left in it, and I don't know why. We always try to figure that out. We always talk about it. The one thing skateboarding has for it, at least like that culture or whatever is left of it, is still kind of embedded, at least from my eyes. Maybe you guys have a different take on it, but the way things are all perceived, the way they're delivered to the public, it's a lot different. Just like everything we do, graffiti and everything is just different now. I think the certain art of, like, your friend is not a good rider, so he's the guy that has the video camera and he makes a video of all of you guys. That's gone. Your friend just has to hold the phone now and you only have to do the one clip, rather than like craft this thing to put together and like try to show someone. The one thing I always agreed on that BMX should have done and had AM and Pro. They have AM and Pro in BMX racing. They don't have it for everything else. Skating has that, so there's something to work for. You come out with a local video and you have a friend has a good part in it. Maybe someone will catch eye to that part, and a board company is like, oh, well, he has a future. He has a filmer and he's good. Maybe we could flow him some boards, and that turns into a bigger and better thing, right? Not to say that going pro is the ultimate goal, but there is something to work for, right? Just like anything we do, there should be that thing that like is a little bit rewarding in your own way, right? But yeah, BMX is just so all over the place. I think everyone that even like runs a brand is like throwing darts in the dark. Like they don't know what to do. They don't know what kids like. They don't know what works. Maybe skateboarding is doing that the same way. I don't know. But everything just seems a little bit all over the place. But one thing I can say is that the skateboarding, BMX, the graffiti, the hardcore, the hip hop, all of that shit is just one unit in my book. I wouldn't know about graffiti if it wasn't for BMX. So when you open like, an old magazine, there's ads for graffiti, or there's ads for BMX, or ads for skate, there's ads for music. I wouldn't know anything about graffiti if it wasn't for BMX. So it's just a tool to get from somewhere else to this thing. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you for coming on the show.
As always.
Sharing your story, sharing your knowledge, and genuinely appreciated it. Thanks for lending that, and thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much. I think a big part of this interview to me that stuck out was like you describing in detail what you find attractive about painting freights, because I feel like those little like details are like just so meaningful in life, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're like the little paradise, and like what makes you, like you said, attractive. It keeps you coming back. It's like the little details, and that whole talk on mentorship and just, I don't know, just you actually caring so much about something is like so sick nowadays, because like you said, it's hard to find people that like genuinely care about just anything, not to sound like negative or pessimistic, but it's just true almost, it's like it's like I feel like passion is almost like a lost art.
When's the last time you guys ran into someone who was like, you just like kind of walked away from it, and you're like, that guy just fucking loves that shit? Like, oh, actually, I'm sure you guys deal with it all the time. Actually, being on the show, you talk to people, but then if you get into the nitty gritty of why someone did something, maybe the story isn't all it really added up to be. Like, I'm sure if you've heard an ICHABOD interview before, it all makes fucking sense. He's obsessed with this shit, right? Maybe it's different now, but it'll always be there. I don't know if that's for everyone. Maybe they did it for fame or they did it for rep. But what I can truly say about myself is that, like, there's this thing in me that that's the escape, right? Like, I zone out when I do that, right? It's like all those certain things. And it almost, like you mentioned before, feels like a job. It almost does feel like a civic duty at this point, where it's like I need to like do this. It isn't a question of why anymore. It's
a
like
responsibility.
It is a responsibility, and there comes like a certain thing like in life where it was like someone asked me if I was going to leave New York once, kind of just like you did in the beginning of this interview. They left New Jersey even though New Jersey was their thing, right? For a very long time of their life. They moved to Austin, Texas, of all places. And I was like, why? It was so hard for me to come to New York and then like break through, get friends, find jobs, girlfriend, all this shit. Why would I leave? Like, it was almost a waste of time to do any of that hard work. I mean, you come so far in like graffiti where it's like, why would you quit? I've sacrificed so much, like with my family and like past relationships, friends, money, time. All of that was just literally for nothing. So why would you just stop doing it? And why don't you care about it? If you don't care about it, then why the fuck are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense. If someone doesn't care about this shit, then it's all just going to go to waste. And really, sometimes when you really look at the broad thing, you're like, holy shit, maybe this doesn't actually mean anything. 'Cause like, why should I even care anymore if no one else fucking cares? I remember that guy Reed Moore. He made a book. I don't know if you guys have it. One of the pages is like on one of the pages, like it's like the Earth, and on it, it's like, does anyone in the whole entire world care? And it's like, oh, I feel it. I really feel that because like we're always bitching about everything, and I'm not one to talk. I'm not curing cancer. I'm literally just putting paint on some shit that's not mine. And but there's a lot of people who cared before me, so it's a complete fucking. It's just a complete lack of respect for everything that's came before you if you just don't give a shit. Because so many people before us went to jail. They did time. You guys know. I don't have to tell you. We do what we do and we keep it moving for those people, right? Like, you got to keep it rolling. Because you're into hardcore. Every time someone gets on stage, some band always got to go, care about this fucking shit. You never know when your scene will just fucking disappear. It is true. It will disappear one
Scenes
day.
do disappear.
They just disappear.
It's crazy.
People just move away or
They
whatever.
could be really thriving scenes too.
And for graffiti, I do hope everyone moves away. But I hope that like the people who are doing it worldwide, they care about like this video, and like they care about when if you watch this and you're like, I don't know, that was fucking stupid, then I would just like do something else, right? Like if you don't see the meaning of it or whatever. So yeah, we care.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Peace.
Cool.